Okay, so in this video we're going to start doing our set-driven keys, and I know I mentioned that in the other video as well, but we just got caught up like doing our actual finger controller here, and I think that was more important. So I'm just going to start out by selecting this this controller here, and I'm going to say edit, and I'm going to say add attribute inside the channel box. So channel box is here, right? So I'm going to say all finger bend. And then we're going to try and say keyable, which means that it's going to be something that the animators can get their hands on out here. So basically all that you see, rotate, translate, and scale and visibility is usually what you call keyable attributes. We're going to say a float, which means that the attribute is just like the translate, rotates, and scales. You know, you can take the float value and they go into digits, point digits. And then I'm going to give it a minimum and a maximum. And because we're going to do this with set-driven keys, there's a ton of ways of doing these sort of attributes, but we're going to do it with set-driven keys. I'm going to say minimum 10, minus 10, sorry, maximum 10. And as a standard, we're going to say 0, and then I'm going to hit OK, or add. And then you can see we get this attribute over here. And it's dialing up and down to minus 10 and 10, but it's actually not doing anything. So how do we add something to this? First of all, we can go in and say we could actually add it to all our controllers. So some of you might think, you know, it's good that we can just add these to the rotate set. So when rotate set goes down here. But the problem is that if I add it to this controller here, if I have a set-driven key on this, my animators won't be able to actually animate on these controllers. So we never actually do set-driven keys or parent constraints or anything to our actual controllers. We do it to the orients of our controllers. So these ones here, right? So in this case, where all my orients are actually not occupied, you know, you can see all my rotate sets here are free. This is a perfect opportunity for us to use that as set-driven keys. However, on our thumb, if we take this on our thumb, it's 0, but our orient is actually set to have rotations here. So what we need to do before we start doing our set-driven keys is we need to actually create a group here on top of this, because these ones are 0, right? All the other thumb controllers are 0, because they're all looking at this one here, and this one is looking at this one. So they're all inheriting that rotation, but they're inheriting from this one, which means that they have the ability to be free on rotation. But we can't put our set-driven keys on this because we want to start our set-driven keys from 0. So in case that we have to go backwards and we need to change something, we don't want to remember that we had to go to minus 17.432. So what I'll do here is I'll duplicate I'll actually duplicate this whole hierarchy, and then I'll delete everything underneath it. So there you go. Now I just have like an empty orient group, and what I'll do here is I'll just go in and I'll call this something else, and in this case I'll call it modify group. And this modify group is currently like, it has nothing underneath it, and it's already parented underneath the arm controller here. So what I can do is I can parent that underneath my thumb orient, and you can see because it's parented underneath that, it's in exactly the same position. The translate and rotates are zeroed, because we know that this is looking at its parent, and the parent is in this exact same position, so it doesn't have any translation or rotation. Also, that means that now I can take my controller here and parent that underneath this modify group, and now I have 2 orient groups before I have my control, which means that I have my orient group which gives them the ability to rotate, and I have my modify group which can now take my set-driven key. So in this case, I'm just going to select all the controllers here. And then I'm going to hit up arrow, which means that they're all going to jump one up. And you can see in all of these, if I select this X here, rotate set, and I dial in, you can see that they're all rotating at the same time. Perfect. So now what I'll do here is I'll go in with all those selected. I'll say space, and I'll say key, and I'll say underneath this key menu, I'll say set-driven key. Key, set-driven key, and then just not set key, sorry, but let's get this key here, set-driven key. We don't need set key, we need set-driven key here, and set. So there you go. So now you'll see all your orients and that one modify group that we created are now also, I have the modify here with the thumb, are all located underneath this driven menu. So everything that's below here is driven, and every time you have one, you can see what channels are available. So if I now have all those there, and I select my attribute controller here, and I say load driver, not driven, but load driver, that jumps up here. And it shows me the attributes that are on this And right now we only have this one because we locked all the other ones. So if I start by going into -10, and then I select all of these, and don't worry that this one is highlighted. We selected all these, and you can see it selects them out in the outliner as well as I click on them. So if I select all of them, and I now click rotate set, because we know that we're rotating ours in set, and then I set this one to be -90. You know, that might be a little bit too drastic, but we want to have something that's pretty high. And don't worry about the thumb, it's okay. Because what we're doing is we're just trying to bend them all equally much. So right now, I've set this one to -10. I haven't done anything else but that. And then I set all of these one to -90 in rotation. Then I click on this all finger bin because I want to tell it which attribute is supposed to drive the rotation. And then down here I say rotate X, or set. And then I hit key. And you can see it gets this little blue knot here. And that means that there's now a connection between these two. But the problem with this is that currently it's only set to be rotating when it's in -10, but it's not told to be doing anything else but that. So we need to set this one in +10. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to set this one into 10. Hit enter here. And then I'm going to select all these groups here and I'm going to set this to 90 instead. So now they go opposite direction, right? Now they're going the other way. So you can see, boom, like so, right? And I set them to 90. And then with this, so you always set the driver first and then you set the driven. That's important. Always driver, set that first to whatever you want, then the driven. So with the driver selected here, I have that in 10. In the driven, next I make sure that they're set to 90 now instead of -90. And then I select that rotate set. I make sure that I selected all of them, selected all this here, rotate set, hit key. And you don't really see anything, but if you have the script editor visible, you see that there's a result here. It says result 1, and you can open up your script editor and you'll see that is setting set driven keyframe on all these. You can see on the control adder set driven key from this attribute to the orient of this rotate set, right? So it does that for all of them, which is also something that you could start replicating and using for your scripts. You know, if you want to start scripting, is that you can start copying these things down here, right? And then this is mel code, so you could put that into a mel tab. And then just run this and it would actually give you the same result. So right now I've set this one to be +10, they go upwards, -10, they go downwards. So if I set this one to 0 now, they're straight, right? Because 0 is in the middle. So if I go here, now if I rotate these, I actually rotate all of my controllers, but I can also afterwards go in and animate these ones manually if I want to do like a little bit of an offset, you know, like so, you know, like this, right? Just so they're not put in the same position. So that's how we do set driven keys, and super simple, but hopefully you guys are following along and you learned something here. So I'm gonna save now, and then I'll see you in the next video. So that's gonna be video 6, where we're gonna keep on going. Just one more touch on the set driven key, but we're just gonna try and correct a few things. So I'll see you in the next video.